everybody's here, so we will reconvene. Just for your information, there is a clipboard going around for everyone to put your name on, please, so we know who's in attendance. Roll call has been taken. And any board member who wishes stipend, please put an asterisk or something on the sign-up board so we catch it. I will look for a motion to approve the minutes of September 10th. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We are now at public comment. It is 30 minutes in length. There is no individual time limit, just a total time limit at 30 minutes. I will cut it off. The time is now 8:05. Is anyone here for public comment?
Yeah, I'm opposed to allowing the Dodge County Sheriff's Department to enter into contract with municipalities without the board approval. Thanks.
Yes, please. Could you state your name, please?
I'm AJ Schnetzler. My spelling?
Please.
SCHNIPZLER, AJAY.
Thank you.
Any other comment? Hearing none, we will close public comment. Clerk of Courts.
Morning, this is different. Usually the jury is watching what's going on, not talking. So, I just wanted to update you on the status of our office, the staff levels. We had one,
Lynn,
in the office.
why don't you sit at the bailiffs?
I can talk pretty loud.
Not, it's hard to
You
hear
can't
you.
hear, okay.
Make it easy on old people.
Okay, nope. So we had, staff member leave the office several months ago to take a different position, and I've had 2 retirements. And so within the office, some staff have moved around to fill those positions, and we now have one left open position, and that's the customer service specialist, the receptionist. One retirement is today. Kelly McMillan has been with the county 20-some years, and she's retiring as of today. So we've lost a lot of experience in the last 6 months in my office, but we're rebuilding, and we hope to have that position filled soon. Of course, it means that everyone else has to step up, take on extra work, but we're trying to do what we have to. Does anyone have a question? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Sheriff.
Can you hear me okay, Joe? You want me to move to?
Over there.
All right. It's like it's your courtroom or something.
It's hard, it is hard to hear here without mics, so make it easy on everybody.
So I'm going to start and then I will turn it over to Scott Middlestead to talk about the budget. As a result of not having the normal budget meetings that we've had in the past, I thought it was important that the members of the committee have an opportunity to hear about some of the changes that we have for the 2022 budget, that you can ask questions. I understand that it hasn't been published and provided to you yet, but we wanted to provide some high level, these are reasons for the change to you, so that you have some of that ahead of time, so that it provides some opportunity for you to pick up the phone and call us if once you do get the budgets, you are able to you can call us and ask additional questions. It gets that process rolling, because I want you to have that opportunity to ask those questions that you might have. So with that, I'm going to have Scott come over here and just run through some of the things that he's put together as far as the budget.
Morning, everyone. I'm just going to give a higher level overview, similar to what I have in our budget narrative, but if you have specific questions, I'll do my best to try and answer them. It might take me a moment to dig a little deeper, but I can do that. And I'm also gonna, this week is my first day working this week. I had some time off. Finance has updated my budget narrative, which actually she just sent me. Let me open it. Now I can speak more specifically, at least to those numbers. So I'm looking at it from the perspective of law enforcement services portion of our agency, which would be basically everything excluding the jail and the jail, so those two parts. Overall, the tax levy for the law enforcement services portion for 2022, or current budget, shows an increase of about $588,000. This is driven partly by wages and benefit increases, which is around $358,000 worth of that. It also includes recreating one position that, if you recall, last year we had one unfunded deputy position. We unfunded it not because we didn't need it, but because there was no way for us to, with the amount of time it takes to hire, train, the capacity of our FTOs, there would have been no way for us to fill it. That we talked to this committee and got approval to recreate that position, and we also funded that. So that's around $93,000 worth as well of that increase. Obviously, with patrol being the backbone for everything we do, we have to be properly staffed to be able to respond to things. So that's why the emphasis has been put there the last few years. Some of the other sources for the increase in expenditures for that, beginning of the implementation, we have budgeted for the video as a service. We talked to the committee about that a month or two ago, I believe. That's our body cameras and in-squad cameras are now getting to the point in age where they need to be replaced. We work with IT. The goal is to move forward with this system, which covers the replacement of the equipment so that we have the new equipment in place, as well as maintenance agreements and everything which are rolled into that as well, and storage. So that's still a work in progress, but that's what was budgeted for and is also part of the reason for some of that increase. The good news is that from the jail portion of this, our overall levy for the jail has decreased by $580,000, or approximately that. So in other words, we have a fairly flat budget this year overall. This is due to several things. Projected increase in revenues based off of what we had budgeted for 2021, and a lot of that has to do with increases in fees, which were implemented about mid-year last year across various areas of the jail, including on the patrol side, but mainly talking about it for the jail at this point. We also, if you recall, we've made the decision to move to 12-hour shifts for 2022, which allowed for the elimination of 4 positions while increasing the overall number of hours in the jail, work hours, by 520. So that also allowed for some of our savings, as well as a projected reduction in overtime total because of that. Our federal border revenue is expected to remain stable throughout 2022, so we are budgeted at this point for the same that we have in 2021. We have seen a decrease in revenues for our transport division, or transport lines, for the past several years for a variety of reasons. At this point, we're unsure where exactly that's going to go, so I also reduced actually those the projection for revenues there. But despite that, like I said, we still come in at approximately $580,000 reduction overall for the jail. So if anyone has any other specific questions, I'd be happy to try and answer those.
I have a quick question, Scott. So, as you know, I sent messages about the federal contract is gonna be expiring in August, and you didn't talk about that, but obviously, you know, we're gonna, third of the year is gonna be under a new contract, I would assume. At what point are you gonna study the costs in the jail and perhaps negotiate a different price?
Our jail admin staff has already begun that process. And unfortunately, there's no way of knowing exactly how long that will take. Hopefully by mid-year, next year at least, we would have that in place, but at this point, I don't think we can figure that into budget as far as like an increase as far as revenues. We won't know until we get through that process.
I mean, given it's, I mean, what's the revenues there, about 5 million a year, right?
Yeah, we budgeted for like 5,022,000 or something, I believe it comes out to.
I mean, realistically, I mean, if there's a 10% increase, you know, it's a huge number that could impact the budget. That's why I'm just shocked that we're not
As far as
studying that
revenues,
today.
as far as revenues?
Revenues, yes.
Yes, that it could, I guess until we get to that point though, that's where we would be hesitant to figure that in yet.
Okay, I mean, I would challenge you to do that as soon as possible. I mean, when we get to November, we'd have a budget. I mean, it could be, you know, $500,000 in revenue, correct? And
Could be.
Yeah, so, it would behoove us to try to do that now and not wait until June or July, because we know it's gonna happen in August, correct? I mean, the budget, I mean, the contract is up in August.
No, it is a contract that is a 3-year agreement, it's a non-expiring agreement. It is, and we have begun the process. Scott said that we have begun, the jail administration has begun the process of evaluating this. We don't have numbers from finance at this point, but they have, it's a quite a lengthy application process. This isn't like any other contract that you do. This is a very lengthy process that takes our jail admin several months to go through and put together, and then once we send it in, there's no guarantee that we're gonna get any timely response from the federal government. I don't anticipate that the federal government is going to respond and have a new agreement in place by August.
And I'm not asking for that. What I'm asking to do is evaluate the cost to provide the service, because the cost to provide the service is what drives the daily cost that we can charge.
And as I said, that's what we're doing.
And you think that's gonna take
It's gonna take
6 months?
It's gonna take a while to put those numbers together. I'm not saying.
I'm just challenging you only because, you know, we paid $85,000 to Matrix to put together some spreadsheets that already, the costing formulas are all developed and derived. So pump some values in, see where it's at.
I'm not saying
I
it's
don't-
gonna take us 6 months to get there. I'm saying that the process of putting together what they require for their amounts takes a while because it is a very lengthy contract. We have to abide by that as well. We're going through, we're working on it, is what we're saying. It's not anything that we can turn around in 2 weeks.
And again, I'm not concerned about the contract. What I'm concerned about is budgeting and looking at what their cost to provide the service is. And we should know what that is. What on an annual basis, I mean, we're putting together a budget every year. We should know what our cost to provide the service is. And if we're working on the budget today, I think we should have that. I think we should have that by November when we approve the budget. That's what I believe. Not mid-year next year. This is, in my estimation, this is one of the biggest revenue pieces that you have, short of, you know, levy support. This is the biggest income. So why wouldn't we evaluate that and determine whether or not we're gonna see maybe a 5% increase or a 10% increase? It's a huge number.
Well, we could bring that to you in November and say, this is what we think might happen in August, but there's no guarantee we're gonna even have anything in place to even recover, to realize those revenues until late in the year or even into that following year because of the speed of the federal government.
Yeah, all right.
But we are working on those things. I don't think we've said anything different than we are working on those things.
Well, when I check with finance, finance is not working on it. So I think your department is working on it, but just my opinion. Thank you. That's all I had.
Any other questions? Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda is the discussion to consider employee referral and sign-on bonus program. And you want me to run through it, or I'll start, and then if Sarah, if you got any comments to add to it. So as you know, as the entire county board knows, we've had difficulty with hiring. So much so that the last person that we've been able to hire was the beginning of July. We just have not been able to get applications. As you know, for as long as back as I can remember, the corrections division has been constant, where we are hiring, trying to catch up, because we've had difficulties in you know, retirements and people leaving. We've got people that are going into different career fields because of the environment out there. Corrections around the state, numerous counties around the state are having the exact same problem we are, where it's 14, 15 people short. Winnebago, the one up by Hudson, St. Croix County, all over the place, just really struggling to keep correctional officers and get correctional officers hired. We have never had to advertise for help before. We are starting to have to do that. We have averaged probably, I'd say, maybe one application a week at best, and the vast majority of those are just not qualified, or they're flushed out in the background as psychological. We are really, really struggling to find people just to apply. And we've been hiring people nonstop since before I was sheriff. I mean, this has just been an ongoing struggle. In Dodge County, we also compete with 4 other prisons, which are also very much struggling. And I'm sure you know very well that the issues they're having there trying to recruit people to be in corrections. In addition to that, we have companies in our area that are paying more than what we are paying, and offering some sign-on bonuses, working day shift hours. In addition to that, our neighbors, our neighboring counties are paying more than what we are paying for starting correctional officers. And so we're really struggling with recruiting people into this field, as is everybody. Not to mention, you know, the atmosphere around law enforcement. People really don't want to be part of that, and you know, nobody's really in the workforce either. And we all know that the nation is struggling with people actually being in the workforce, and a lot of our people that we hired in 2000 when we opened that facility are at retirement age, and we're seeing a lot of that. They are all to the point where I'm going to be retiring now. And I went through and I looked at the people that have left this year, and I believe it's 7 people that have retired. A couple of them are leaving a little bit early because they don't want to work 12-hour shifts, maybe 6 months to a year. But many of them, I'm just retiring. I am to the point where I need to be done. Corrections is not an easy field to work in, and I need to be done. We've had a number of other people who have moved, especially the younger generation. They don't want to work the nights and the weekends, and they moved out of those fields in that field into Monday through Friday jobs. One of them, Tara took from me. One of them stayed with my agency as our new deputy secretary, and so we lost a couple there. And I've had numerous exit interviews, and one in particular who said his entire reason he left to go to Fond du Lac County was because their county board supports them. They don't do that here. And that is what I hear in so many exit interviews. And it's unfortunate that perception is out there. But it is out there, and that is the most common theme that I'm seeing when we're interviewing our employees before they leave. So we need to do something so that we can hire. I mean, if we were to hire 5 or 6 people and get them rolling, we'd be in a decent spot. Not great, but we'd be able to function well. So the Clearview took a sign-on bonus to their committee. Had $4,000 was the amount that they took to their committee. Their committee overwhelmingly supported actually upping that to $6,000, weighting it heavily at the back end of the sign-on bonus. They moved forward with that, supported it. HR committee also supported that and moved it forward, and they are now advertising for that. We are the other entity within the county that is struggling to bring in people and get applications, and we, obviously, it is important for consistency, because if you're not consistent, then certainly employees say, hey, why are they getting up here, and are we not as important as what they are? So the HR committee approved a policy, and that policy is included in the packet. That policy is not specific to corrections. It is for any department in the county that needs, or is in a situation like Clearview and I are. They can go to HR committee, they can request from the HR committee authorization for that, and the HR committee approved that policy, approved it for us, pending approval by your committee. So that's what we're here, that's why item B is on there. I think I might probably covered most of it. I don't know if Sarah have anything else to add? No? But Sarah is here if you have any questions on that policy as well.
I have one, Sheriff. I understand getting new people in, and I know we've talked about this. Getting new people in is priority to boost numbers up, but retaining current staff is very important also. Is there any plans at all of doing anything to supplement the existing staff rather than just the new staff?
The county administrator has brought forward a plan, which was discussed at the finance committee, it was discussed at the HR committee, or a proposal, I should say, not a plan, which the HR committee still needs to discuss further and put input into, but it does mimic what Columbia County has done with ARPA funds. And I will tell you that there are a number of employees who have said, signing bonuses for new people are great, but what are you gonna do to keep us here? So that plan has been presented to HR. Just a quick overview, it's a 4-year plan. Basically is $100 a month payment to all the employees, which would then be funded through the ARPA funds. That's just the short version of it. I don't have the notes on specifically how it works, but I think it would behoove us to wait until the HR committee actually has a chance to go through and flesh that out. And I've let my staff know that there is that possibility out there. We need to wait and see what the HR committee and then the county board ultimately decides. But their eyes are on that.
Thank you.
I have some questions too. So, the county recently enacted a PTO plan, and sole purpose of that plan was employee recruitment and retainment. So, are you saying that that plan won't necessarily work for these types of employees? And if so, what do you perceive the reasons why? Or what changes could we make to the PTO plan to perhaps include these people?
I don't really see a huge, I mean, the PTO is positive for current employees who are able to utilize their time a little bit more freely. They put the time into one bucket. It simplifies the rules on when you can use that. I really don't know that it's going to be, you put that out in recruitment terms, that we have PTO come work for us. I don't think that's going to really attract a lot of people until they actually get in here and they're looking at benefits. Yeah, well, that's a pretty decent plan for me to be able to use. I don't see the PTO plan as anything that is far and above way better than what our current plan is. I think it's a good plan, but I don't see it as anything that's going to be, tons of extra days off. I don't see that. It's very comparable, in my opinion, to what we already have now, but I'm not really an expert on the PTO plan. That has been more HR and their push. I've read through the documents, but I'm not an expert to speak on any of those things. I don't think that we can use a silo approach here, and one thing is going to solve our problems with recruitment and retention. I think there has to be a number of different things that we need to do to try and bring in people because of all of the reasons that I listed earlier as to why corrections statewide and countrywide actually is struggling to bring people in, just like nursing. Our professions are two of the professions that struggle to bring in people. And so I think we have to have a multifaceted approach to get that done. And I'm certainly open to options. If somebody can walk me in 10 applicants today and we can interview them, I'm all for it. If you can find a way to do that for me, I'm all for it. And then we wouldn't have to do this, but I think the hiring bonus is something that is, unfortunately, I'm not a big fan of it, but unfortunately it's becoming more and more standard in businesses out there, and we need to be able to compete with that. Fortunately and unfortunately, I have wages in my wage line that I'm going to be able to absorb that into because I don't have people working in those jobs. So this isn't anything that's going to increase our budget necessarily, maybe a little bit at the end, but it's something that's going to be absorbed into the wages, and that makes it a little bit easier to swallow, but we've got to be competitive, and that's the thing. We have to be competitive with those other ones out there to bring people in. PTO isn't the end all. This is going to bring people in here.
Well, but that's what was sold to us, though,
No,
is
it
the
wasn't.
recruitment and retainment. Well,
Part of
sorry,
it.
that was the primary goals.
That's part of it.
Changing it. Well, but we haven't even allowed that to even happen. And, you know, our board meeting was, 2-3 weeks ago that was approved. And already we have a new plan in place, or attempt of a new plan to augment what we've already passed. That's the way I see it.
Because I'm in an emergency right now. I'm shutting down a pod. We need to get people in the door right now. The PTO plan isn't even implemented yet.
But
And
by
I gotta
your,
get people
by
in
your
right
words
now.
to me, closed on a pod, I think you said it takes 5 to 6 months to train these individuals, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Four-
So
four-ish-
even if we were to
four-ish months.
hire 10 people tomorrow, like you say, if I could bring them in, we're still looking 6 months down the road. Right?
4
4 months.
4 months,
Okay.
yeah.
I have to circle back to one comment you made, because it refers to me, is that the county board does not support them, and that's the number one theme that you get in your exit reviews. In a quick review of the McGrath study, there's nothing to indicate that that was a primary cause for people leaving. So I don't know if at some point, I suppose I'll have to talk to Sarah and see if that's some of the primary reasons. It would have been nice to know that during the McGrath study and have her understand that, because then some of the recommendations could have solved that as well. We certainly didn't know that, or I didn't know that, at least until I sat here with you to say that, you know, my actions and stuff are what's causing some of your people to leave.
That's disappointing because I know that has been a common theme for many years. That's disappointing that you haven't heard that. I know it's been mentioned at the HR committees.
But it may be mentioned, but it's not referenced in the minutes. And been a board member for 5 years, haven't received any calls from anybody pertaining to this, nor have I seen any editorials in the paper, any comments or anything that would lead me to believe that that's the primary reason people are leaving the jail.
I certainly wouldn't do any editorials in the paper regarding that, because it's usually my goal to try and limit that, to keep those things internally, so that we can address those issues. I don't think it's editorial worthy, but it certainly has been a point of discussion.
And I'm saying, you know, I mean, if I was an employee, I would be frustrated, I would be writing it, I wouldn't expect the sheriff to write an editorial. I have concerns like Tom has, you know, if we start to incentivize people to the tune of $3,000 a year, there's gonna be undue pressure on existing employees, to leave. I don't know where the $6,000 number came from. Certainly I can drive by locations, I can look in the paper and I can see $1,000 sign-on bonuses, $2,000 sign-on bonuses. I don't see $6,000 sign-on bonuses in the paper for a job that pays $22, $24 an hour. So, I'm not opposed to trying to incentivize and get people here, but the number just seems awful high to me. And I would like to see some changes to that.
Any other questions? Move on to the next item.
I'm sorry, Tom, was this an action item or?
Yes. Yes. it's pending, it was approved at the HR committee pending JPP approval, so I would need approval of the committee to move forward with it.
What are we approving, just this administrative policy?
The sheriff's, or the corrections officers being able to utilize it, correct, Sarah?
Yeah, to allow the sign-on bonus for corrections officers.
So the administrative policy would apply to both Clearview and the sheriff's department?
If you approve it, yes.
Question in the back?
Thank you very much. Do you believe we have an unfair or unequitable compensation?
Ma'am, you're gonna have to,
Do you believe we have an
ma'am,
unfair?
hold on, he can't hear you, so we'll just give you a mic, we all set.
Thank you.
Make sure it's on there, Kurt.
Testing.
There you go.
I'm asking if you think we have an unfair or an equitable compensation structure. Because we did just pass, we just went through the McGrath implementation and everybody filled out all their paperwork and this seemed to be the thing we had to do.
Mine's too rich.
And then we had the PTO and old policy that needed to do. Yes, that I concur with Supervisor Gutenberger. It's being sold to us as the thing that's gonna solve our retainment and retention and recruitment. And we're not even making it through a full month cycle before the next new thing is coming before us for extra money. I absolutely am not gonna be supporting spending our ARPA funding on bonuses. I just, if our compensation structure is improper or inequitable or below average, then that should have been revealed with the McGrath study that the county paid over $100,000 for in the end. And we implemented it as of July, and it's September, or now it's October, and we're talking about 2, 4, 6, 8,000. I just wanna know, what we're gonna do for the community. That for me, it's about what we're doing for our residents. And if our staff is underpaid, it should be revealed somewhere so that the full board has an understanding of what we need to do differently. I don't know, I just would like to know what else we've tried. Jefferson County, for example, all law enforcement officers start out in the jail. I think that might be something we could try. I don't know, could we try other things besides throwing my neighbor's money and recruit? And everybody's hiring. I mean, everybody's having trouble. The jail is an issue, but we have the option to close a pod if necessary when we have these shortages. Whereas perhaps manufacturing or other businesses in the community don't have that option.
You're right, and I think you got a lot of questions there.
Yeah.
I'll start at the end and try and work through some of these. Closing a pod, yes, is an option for us to relieve the overtime. However, it is going to cost the taxpayers more money by closing the H pod long term because the offsetting revenues that come in greatly decrease. So at the end of the day, you are going to cost a lot more money by closing down a pod. And so making that clear, you mentioned what are we gonna do for the community? Public safety is one of the two most important things in our community that we have a responsibility for, to make sure that we have a good place we can attract people to. Public safety is for the community. Taking people out of the community, putting them in the jail is for the entire community. There's we look at the wage studies. Unfortunately, the wage study was done, I believe, the studies were done in 2020, all those studies were done then. If you go out and you look at the resolutions for contracts and the wage changes in those neighboring communities, they've all taken place since then. We are seeing 3% and 4% increases being approved by other county boards over the last 6 months to a year, which, wow. I mean, we haven't seen those types of increases in a very long time. And all of those things are stacking up here, and PTO being pitched, it's not the end all. Is it a piece of it? Sure. But I think there are a lot of pieces in this puzzle if we are going to attract people to our community. And like I said, if you're able to come up with other options that we can put on the table to attract people to get applications, I'm all for it. I don't wanna have to put signing bonuses out there. Where do we land on $6,000? That's where Health and Human, or the Health Facilities Committee landed. I wanna be consistent, that's why, and really it's a policy that HR adopted and brought here. Starting people in the jail, if you're gonna start people in the jail like Jefferson County does, it's gonna be more expensive, because they're starting at deputy wages. There's about 12 or 13 of them around the state that do that. In addition to that, the additional wages they have, they are also protective status, which the county pays in those locations as well. So it's going to be much more costly to do that, where we have the lower wages with the civilian correctional officers, it's another. But sure, if you wanna go and work in the jail in Jefferson County, you're gonna make more money there, just because you are a sworn deputy with those additional wages with that protective status. It would be very, very expensive for us to be able to do that with 70, 80 employees. So we're trying to weigh it out here. This is a 6-month really approval. This isn't an ongoing, we're never gonna look at this again. This is 6 months, we bring it back again in April to see how is this working. If it's not working, we stop, we do something different. But the economy and the state of affairs in our nation right now are really putting us in a really difficult position. And I've gotta find people to bring in so that we can continue to bring in those revenues and offset those taxpayer costs. Because if we don't, next year, we're gonna have to pay a lot more money to balance the budget that we're going to be approving. And we need to find a way to get people in our doors so that we can keep our facility operating as is, and continue to bring those revenues in to offset the cost to the taxpayers. So, again, if you have other options, I'm open to it. But I don't know what that option is right now. I'd like to try this to see if it works for 6 months and see what happens. If it works, great. Then we've got people in those positions, we can open up page again, and we spent a little bit of money to make a lot more. And if it doesn't work, we stop the practice and we move forward. That's I think I answered most of the questions. Maybe I missed one.
What is the amount of money?
The amount of money?
Yes.
Well, it depends on what we have in 6 months. If we fill all 15 positions, which I don't anticipate happening, it would be 15 times 6,000. Divided by 2 years, and mostly in the second year. But I don't anticipate we're going to see 15 people in the next 6 months. I would love it if that happened. That would be what the cost is over 2 years.
And what's the cost if we lose a half a dozen employees because they feel like they're shorted? Because somebody coming in is gonna get $4,000 more per year in the first year than them. What's that cost? I mean, it's gonna far exceed, we'd only have to lose 2 and we would lose that whole $90,000 that we spent.
I understand that.
And more.
I understand that.
And without having a plan that really addresses that concern, that's what bothers me. I mean, Tom brought it up himself, If we lose people because we're giving more, if Del and I are working at the same job and he's making $4,000 more in the first year than I am, I'm not gonna be happy. And he's gonna see that, I'm gonna see that.
And I am not going to bring anything additional to the committee or to the board until the HR committee deals with the other one that they have before them. I've explained that. I would hope that if this is approved and that other plan isn't approved, that you would have another option for us that we could bring to correctional officers to help offset that. And I'm certainly open to suggestions to doing that, if you're right.
As I sit here, if you believe you need a recruitment bonus, I believe we can craft a recruitment bonus that will address my concerns and others' concerns without going to the CNA plan. CNAs are a different situation nationwide. I know you said that nationwide there's problems in recruiting correctional officers. I have not seen that, in other counties in Wisconsin. We are unique because we've got competition with, Fox Lake, Dutch County Correctional, Waupun. we do have competition for the same type of job. People can get trained here and move there. I would like to see us come up with a sign-on bonus, but not necessarily the same as what's happening with this CNA plan. That would be my preference, and if I have to make a motion to push it back and have you come up with a different plan, that I'm prepared to do that. I just feel as though, you know, paying somebody $4,000 after 1 year is more than what, anything that I've seen, you know, of all of the Dodge County employers out there. So, and I believe if we're not paying a fair wage, then bring a plan forward for that as well, and we can adjust that. I can't support what I see here. I'm just gonna make a motion to send this back. And I don't even know who crafted this thing. It sounds like HR maybe put this together for the sole purpose of addressing CNA concerns, but I believe we need one that addresses the correctional officer concern directly.
We have a motion on the floor to send this back to the sheriff.
Can't hear ya.
I'll use my. There's a motion on the floor to send this back to the sheriff for reconsideration from the comments that were made. Is there a second? Motion dies for lack of a second. Any further comments?
Well, past that, had to use, sign bonuses on previous positions as well. There's times where they work and sometimes they're not used at all. I think a key point in this one, if the employee doesn't stay long-term for over 2 years, they have to pay back all the money anyhow. I think that's a key point. Excuse me. Because if they're not staying long-term, they're not really collecting those $6,000 either. If we're looking long-term, we want these people to stay long-term. And I agree that we have to do something with the current employees as well, but that's not something that's on the table currently. So we have to fix one problem at a time. I'm not in favor of spending money wildly either, but I think that 2-year repayment plan, if they don't stay long-term, is key with this plan. Just how it's laid out, and also staying universal with what we're doing in Clearview as well. I understand it's 2 different things. I was in healthcare for 13 years. I understand how that world works completely. I also know how business management does as well. But that 2-year payback is key, in my opinion. Thank you.
Ben, are you making a motion to approve or accept this plan?
Not making a motion, I was just expressing myself.
Well, I'll move that we push the administrative policy be approved by JPP.
I have a question, Tom. So, which brings up the point, how do we anticipate getting the money back if somebody leaves prior to 2 years? It's impractical. You can't withhold the pay. How do you anticipate getting the money back if they have left prior to their terms?
So there are actually a couple different options there. The first one is that when an employee leaves employment, there are certain payouts that they get, and withholding those payouts, I believe, that's how some of that would be recovered in that first 2 years. Also, there's a tax intercept program, which would be the other option to recover those monies afterwards.
Do you anticipate all of these employees signing contracts? Or will they be just showing up? I guess that's a question for Sarah. Or Sarah, how would you anticipate monies being returned?
So there is an agreement that the employee would sign. It spells it out, that, you know, we will try to recoup the money on their last paycheck. If not, they are made aware that small claims or tax intercept would be used to collect those monies. So it's not a contract, it's an agreement.
There's a motion on the floor to accept this policy and procedure. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same
Aye.
sign.
Aye. Tom, I would just ask that the sheriff come back after 6 months then with a detailed report on loss of employees and the number of employees that were gained through the program before it's extended beyond that 6 months.
Motion carries, and Sheriff, if we can get a 6-month update, I would appreciate it.
I'll work with Sarah on that, absolutely. Item C, employee retention option, I gave a brief overview of that in the prior topic. I don't know if Mr. Milky, you wanted to add anything to that at all, or no? Okay. Unless you guys have other questions on that, I think that's been talked about in other committees as well, so. If there's nothing there, I will move on to the next topic, which is the resolution authorizing the sheriff to contract for law enforcement services. You have a draft resolution attached in your packet. If you recall, when we brought forward the positions, the tentative positions for the village of Theresa, I was asked the question on the floor, how would we be moving forward with these contracts and being approved? And my response to that was I would need to work with Kim on that, our corporation counsel. I did that, and she drafted the resolution that was in your packet based on a conversation she and I had. And I'm hoping I'm not speaking out of turns, but her comments to me was that bringing all potential contracts to the full county board would be difficult, not impossible, but certainly difficult or impractical. And her recommendation was to put in this resolution, which gives the blanket authority to enter into the contracts. And I've got some other comments on that here shortly, but to enter into those contracts, very similar to what Health and Human Services does with their contracts. The Health and Human Services Director has the ability to enter into contracts. In fact, short of these statutory restrictions, I enter into all contracts at the sheriff's office now as the elected official. So this gives that authority to do that because statute does lay out that the county board for cities and villages needs to be part of that process. This ordinance makes the county board part of that process and allows you to delegate that authority. You always have the ability to rein that back in if you're not liking what you're seeing. But additionally to that, you are still, as a county board, going to have to make sure that there are budgeted funds. You're still gonna have to make sure that there are authorized positions for these as part of your budget every year. But what it will eliminate is the need to actually bring the agreement to you every time we have a renewal. And it allows us to have them review, we move forward, and you're still gonna have information on the costs of these because it's gonna be part of the budget. Of course, always have access to the contracts because you can always request those. So this really cuts through the red tape and the time that it takes to get through. Duck season starts tomorrow, early. The time it takes to get through getting these contracts approved, some of these contracts are going to be very, very minimal. I'm working on one that's probably going to be around $30,000. We've got some that are going to be a little bit more, but the vast majority of these are far less than any other contract that I negotiate. And at the end of the day, if I'm negotiating bad deals, one, you're not only going to rescind the ability to do that, but two, there's going to be accountability at the polls for me as well. So there's still elected official oversight on this, and I know there has been concern over this. Really, this is a matter of efficiency, and these villages, cities, towns struggle as well with their timelines, and if we have to add another timeline in there, it makes it very difficult to get these agreements done in a timely fashion. So I'm requesting that you consider this. I have had people call me about this. I've asked that if they had issues with this, wanted some other language put in, that they present it to me. I've received nothing. I would certainly, if you want some additional time to look at this, we certainly can. If you'd like to move forward with it today, you can do that as well.
Sheriff, I had one question. You have no possibility of adding staff or adding budget by us granting this authority, correct?
That's correct.
That has to come in a different resolution?
Correct. Well, adding staff, yes, that you know very well how we add staff. That has to be approved by itself. Adding, for these first contracts, there will need to be a budget amendment done to the 22 budget if we have a contract that's put in place. And then, so we'll have to have a budget amendment for the revenues and the expenditures. But subsequent years, we'll be able to build that right into the budget. And it will need to be approved in the budget. So yes, it is all approved by the county board at the end of the day.
Are there any other questions?
I don't know if it's a question, but a comment. I guess in my time here, 5 years, this is the first time we've considered a contract with a municipality for sheriff services.
Correct.
And we haven't even gotten through this process.
Correct.
I think I'd like to see this go through and see if there's a problem. I don't see a problem here because municipalities all have to have a budget done for their January 1 to December 30 year. So usually that happens about this time of the year. And I haven't seen any other ones coming to us as yet, except the village of Crescent. I think I'd like to see this work first before we go looking for another policy.
And you're correct, there are none yet, and we're working on trying to get some numbers here within the next week to a couple municipalities. I've got another one, actually, all three of them are looking for them this year, so they consider it part of their budget, but they also have that same opportunity as you do, that if something is approved after the budget, they can always do that budget amendment for approval. Or they can build police services into their budget and then simply transfer it to the contract rather than what they're doing now. But just for clarification purposes for you there, Ed, yeah, we don't have anything finalized yet.
Any other?
Sheriff, two questions. We were starting talking about Resoloution originally, right? Okay, who came to you with this idea? Do you know?
That would have been the the chair of their committee.
Their committee, okay.
Yes.
What does the police chief think about this?
So I have to correct something I said to the county board, because it was, the police chief doesn't want to get rid of the police department, but the police chief has told me, and this is where I mixed it up a little bit, the police chief told me that if somebody has to contract, he wants it to be with us.
Which makes sense. That's what Columbia County does over there.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have some questions, Tom. We have, I get where it may be onerous for the whole Dutch County Board to approve a contract, and we have 33 opinions coming down on a contract. But there's no reason that this committee couldn't do that. I mean, our meetings aren't that long that, if you brought a contract forward, that we could bless it with our eyes as much as the other people that are being proposed in here. Some of the concerns, of course, was, budget, but finances, that when you enter into a contract with one of these municipalities, it's not gonna cost any of the other residents of this county money to provide those services. And, this says basically the finance director will review the financial terms, but that's not any assurance that the costs will be covered. That's just, for all I know, you could just look it over. Corporate counsel will review the terms of the contract. That always happens. All the contracts are kind of reviewed by corporate counsel. But it just seems to me like we're bypassing all control of the county board, and we're just gonna relinquish that to somebody else. And the statutes, I see, it says that the county can enter into this, contract. It doesn't say the sheriff. And I think that's why we're here with this piece of paper, is you want that authority, but I'm not willing to give that up at this point. It's not all about the budget and, your conversation centered around the budget, it's all built into the budget. I would challenge anybody, to open up the budget and find the actual cost of providing services to anybody or anything. And if you wanna pull out the Health and Human Services budget for an example, and tell me how much we've contracted with a particular vendor, Oconomowoc Development Training Center, you're not gonna see it in there. It's gonna be built into one big number, just like all of the other numbers. So to claim that I would be able to see it in the budget and know what I'm budgeting and stuff like that, that's just disingenuous. Personally, I would like to see at least the first one come to us, let it be that benchmark, and then come forward with something like this. In other words, if you wanna enter a contract with the Village of Teresa, let this committee review that. Let's see what it means, but much like when we entered into a contract to provide services to Dodge County Fair, or the Fair Board, right? That came here, we had a chance to look that over and approve that. That's what I would like to see, that's what I think is missing in here. I would rather have it say, the JPP will review and approve the contract. And then at some point, yes, we could change this, or we'll give you the authority today, we could take it back. Well, we could put that in here, and then at some point down the road, if we feel comfortable about all these things happening, then we could take that review process out. But it's not an onerous task here. I mean, our meetings are an hour and a half at best. I know HR and some of these other committees, they meet, half a day. So it wouldn't be that difficult for us as a committee to review the contract. Let's start there and then move on. I personally have called Kim. I think you said you had a conversation with Kim. It's my understanding that you asked her to put specific things in here. She's not here to defend herself, so I can't ask her specific questions, but there's no oversight in this thing here, and that's my problem with it.
No, there's actually oversight of 90,000 people over an elected official, so let's not say there's no oversight.
Okay.
But this was a collaborative effort between Kim and.
But I would say 3,000 of those asked me to come here and represent them.
That's fine.
Okay.
Yep. And I don't know what Kim told you, but the vast majority of this, we collaborated on it, but she put together this agreement. This was her recommendation. And as with anything, if you have proposed amendments to these, or you would like to see something different, I certainly would appreciate, just as you would, some communication to that effect, so that rather than now we have to sit here and wait for another month, we could have had that proposal all ready to go, unless you want to make a motion here today to move that, but now we have to delay the process again, and that's what we're trying to get away from, is this.
But Dale, this doesn't delay any negotiations you have with Teresa, does it?
No, but we certainly could have had this all kind of hashed out ahead of time.
Understand, but this doesn't delay any negotiations you're having with any other municipalities?
No.
Okay.
No, those will continue, but I would appreciate, if obviously there have been people who have had these concerns all week since it was published last week, and nobody reaches out to me with any. I had one supervisor that really reached out and gave me some feedback, which I asked for. Do you have some additional amendments, or do you have some other options that we can put in, or something that we can have ready?
Dale, I'm done being lectured. My number's in the book, it's on the website. If you wanna call me, you can call me too. Don't say, because I didn't call you, it's my fault.
Well, you never do.
I will stop this discussion right now. There's a couple questions in the back.
It should be on, it could just be. There's a little button side, push up.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been listening, standing back and listening, and what is striking me is that we are now being asked to help the executive branch of our government create legislation. If we don't like what this resolution looks like, let's talk to someone in the executive branch to make this legislation what we want it, when in actuality, the JPP Committee is a legislative branch, not the executive branch puts that together. The legislative branch puts that together. It's called checks and balances. It's called balance of power. It's called constitutionality. This, I believe, has been done backwards. If JPP thinks it's needed, if the sheriff thinks it's needed, sheriff talks to JPP. Executive branch talks to legislative branch. Legislative branch says, yes, maybe we do need to do something. And then the legislative branch puts together legislation. And once the legislation is passed, the executive branch follows it. That's how the Constitution works. And I was hoping that someone would maybe see this, but it's becoming very evident to me when we're being told to call the executive branch to create legislation or to change it. And one other item, statute 59.0001 defines county as the County Board of Supervisors, period. So I think that our statutes in Wisconsin reflect the principles of the Constitution. Even when we can't see it, it's still built in, and we really need to adhere to that. Thank you.
Not to, my question is a contract verbiage in all contracts, even not just specifically to the sheriff's department, but to all contracts in Dodge County, whether it be Clearview, the highway department with the state. The problem with these contracts in comparison to your labor costs, which are constantly changing and increasing, and is the contract addressing any increase in wages? And if it's not, there's a creep factor that's involved, and that creep is over time, it creeps up to the point where the difference between the cost of the service when it was first laid out and the increasing cost on the labor, that creep factor ends in the lap of the Dodge County taxpayers. That swing in between those two numbers. Until such time as those contracts are written where if our labor rates change, that contract changes immediately, and I doubt like heck if that's in place. And there's a creep, like I say, a creep factor. When you modify your labor costs, whether it be paid time off or $6,000 sign-on bonuses, you just raise the cost of that operation. As an example, like in Clearview, I mean, in my mind, if they got a long-term contract and now we're raising our cost on one end and you're not raising it on the other, what you have is a sweep and a creep that it reflects on the taxpayers of Dodge County, picking up the difference. And I'd really like to know how these contracts are written when a subject comes up when you raise pay. Because if they're not addressed in those contracts, the taxpayers in Dodge County are swallowing the rope on that mess. So that's my only saying. Thank you.
Mr. Bear said is being addressed in the contracts.
Any other comments, concerns? I'm sorry.
For the sheriff. On here, it says that all contracts for law enforcement services provided by the following conditions are met. Is there more than one of you in the department that's going to make sure these contracts meet that, or just one person?
No, the chief deputy and I work together on our contracts.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I guess one final comment. I'd still like to wait to see what happens with the bill to discuss it, but I don't have any problem with inserting what Dave mentioned, that it comes through JPP and that rather than through the entire county board. I don't think we have to go to the county board with each one. But just like we did with the Fair Association, I mean, we basically approved that contract.
Yes.
City,
Well, not necessarily the contract, but I think we laid out
Yeah.
parameters.
sitting as the chair of the committee, I don't like to influence decision-making, but I do have a comment. After reading this, I walked in here this morning, and most of you who know me, understand that I am a firm believer in supporting our department heads. We pay them a lot of money. They're competent people, very competent people, and do a good job, and I believe in letting them do their jobs. I felt that way about this also. I thought, okay, Sheriff, enter into your contracts, you can't do anything with staff or money, that's gotta come to the board itself, if we would give the blanket approval. After hearing comments today, I've been swayed, that doesn't happen often. I like the idea of streamlining this, so it's not a long, drawn-out process that takes forever. I do like the comment that it comes to us, that we as a county board to give us the delegated authority to approve the contracts. It'll cut some time off the total tail end of getting this done. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'd like to send this back to the sheriff to maybe incorporate that into his plan, that his contracts can be negotiated, when it's ready, bring it to us, we approve it, boom, and we'll probably need a resolution to the board giving us the authority to do that, or delegating the authority to us. I don't know the legalities of it, but I would like to send it, I'm making a recommendation to send it back to the sheriff to incorporate those things. If it's up to the committee, if you agree, fine, if you want more, fine, but I think that would be a nice compromise. Any comments on that?
I agree with you.
I'll make it as a motion.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second to do whatever I just said,
Send it back.
Like I just said.
to
I'd
send
like
it
to
back
send
to
it
the
back.
sheriff for
To send it
review.
back and to include the JPP committee as a authorizing body.
Correct, and whatever it takes to accomplish that with resolutions, et cetera. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor to send it back to the sheriff or to incorporate those things, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Sheriff, the crash overview is,
Yeah.
do you know how long this is gonna take? There's another meeting going on.
This won't take long.
Okay.
Unless there's questions. So a month and a half ago, Supervisor Guckenberger requested some information on the fatal crashes that we've had in the county thus far. I can talk about some of them. Some of them are still under investigation. I can't discuss those. But what I can tell you is that it's 12, I believe it's 12 crashes, 12 fatalities at this point. Is it 13? The uniqueness of this year in comparison to other years, and some years we do have these as well, but 2 of those crashes related to 5 of those fatalities. And that certainly adds up really quickly once you have multiple fatalities in a single crash. But I'm gonna go through each of them that I'm able to, and just give you a quick overview on what we are. What I can tell you is that the causation for all of these is all over the board. There isn't a single factor that really jumps out related to crashes or even location. The first one we had this year, crash, it's Highway 73 and D. That one, single vehicle crash. As I got there, the fog was just lifting. We just had enough of precipitation on the road that the roads were slippery. Vehicle lost control and went in the wrong lane. I'm sorry, it wasn't single vehicle, it was a 2-vehicle crash. And crossed sort of center line and hit a straight truck. Simply weather condition related. Probably an experienced driver there as well was part of that. The next one, Highway 33 and A. 1 fatality, 1 person was injured. Again, icy road conditions, failure to have control. One of the drivers was injured and ejected, not wearing a seatbelt. So we've got 2 of them, I guess we've got at the beginning of the year were road condition related. Typically not the case. Highway 33 in Breezy Point, can't really discuss that one because that one is still under investigation, but that one was one of the double fatals that we had earlier in the year. Highway 33 in Grove, we had 1 fatality there and 3 people injured again. That one I can't discuss causation because that's still under investigation. Highway 67 in Double M, we had 1 fatality there. That was a failure to stop at a stop sign, of which I have had significant conversation with the highway commissioner, with one of the residents down there on Double M. Then there was a follow-up conversation with the town chair as well, on some signage and other issues there. Unfortunately, that intersection, we've had a few fatal crashes there, and it's typically because of that failure to stop at a stop sign. Most of the time, as I recall, it's traveling east on Highway Double M. But there again, it was simply not stopping at that stop sign. Highway 151 and B, that was our triple fatality. Still under investigation. Certainly, everybody is aware that there was a wrong-way driver on that one. Fortunately, that's the only wrong-way driver fatality that we've had so far this year. There you've got 2 of those crashes adding up to five fatalities already. Certainly looking at options of what we can do for those types of fatalities, wrong-way drivers, because we get them more than you think. It's not an easy fix. It's certainly not an inexpensive fix either, to shut down or to put up signage and things that people are going the wrong way. There's options out there, but it's very, very costly. The next one, Highway AW and E, actually the violation that occurred on that one, the violation occurred in Fond du Lac County. And then the location of the crash occurred on the other side of the center line, making it a Dodge County crash, a Dodge County fatality. But there again, failure to stop at a stop sign by a bicycle. Highway C and Jersey Road. Again, all of these are under investigation. I can talk a little bit more about some of these because we don't believe there's criminal investigation involved in them any longer, but 1 fatality, 2 injured. Again, so we do have a little bit of a theme here with failure to stop at a stop sign, failure to yield right away, speeding, unlicensed driver. We had that one, and then the most recent one, Highway 16, 60, and J. I can't discuss that one at this point because we're still investigating that one. But that's a rundown of the various fatal crashes that we've had this year, spattering around the county. And we have 900 square miles, which is a very large rural area. As you look across the state, fatal crashes typically occur in rural settings. Very seldom do you see them in the cities. We get a few of them now and then, but we have so many roadways, rural roadways in our county. It's a constant struggle. We continue to make efforts on trying to get people to slow down. You may have seen recently we put out Operation Phones Down, trying to get people to put their phones down while driving. We've got an extra emphasis on that to try and get people to, our deputies out there stopping people, making sure they're aware, but asking the public to cooperate by putting their phones down as well. So there's a lot of different initiatives we put together. We're trying to, with some collaborative efforts with State Patrol. Staffing is an issue there. State Patrol doesn't have as many troopers in Dodge County as they used to. We used to have 6 troopers in Dodge County, and Ron Zank was one of them. So if you know Ron Zank and you knew he made a lot of traffic stops, great guy, you just never want him behind you. And now he's downstairs working for us, so things continue to change. I think distracted driving is continuing to become more and more of a problem, but it's very difficult for us to enforce and prove those violations. But every crash we have, our crash team is taking a look at those phones if they're able to, trying to identify were they on the phone, and we will utilize that. And I know the DA will certainly look at charges if they're warranted in those cases. So we've been working hard to make sure that we hold people accountable that are doing things they shouldn't be doing. Any questions on anything else?
Do you still have the Traffic Safety Commission?
Yes.
You do, because we used to go out and look at some of these conditions to make sure if it was a road condition or signage or something.
So they don't go out to them anymore. We actually have videos made and brought in for these fatal crashes and serious crashes, and they've got a committee meeting coming up in 2 weeks, week and a half, 2 weeks, another one to review the most recent fatal crashes, and we have law enforcement agencies and fire departments and highway department, the DOT is there at those meetings, and that's a really good place to go and discuss some of the issues. Knock on wood, we've been fortunate, a couple of our hot spots, 151 and DE, we're not seeing them there this year. Well, I really hope I said that and it doesn't change. But we've had that as a focus area, and we've been doing our best to get our guys out there to slow people down and make sure that that doesn't continue to be a problem there. We've had focus areas on Highway 33, 67, 41, and so we look at these crash areas and we respond to try and minimize them. I know 151 and C has come up. Fortunately, we haven't really had major serious injury crashes at 151 and C. In fact, we haven't had a ton of crashes there. We've had a lot of complaints there about semis crossing and blocking traffic, but we haven't had serious crashes there, which has been fortunate. Other questions?
I see your signs on 151 that say speed enforcement zone. I never see a squad out there. Is that just kind of a hint to slow down?
Well, we can't always be there, obviously. I've limited staffing, but when we do go out and enforce, the way we have it laid out is we have those enforcement zones set up, and when our deputies are free, not doing other things, we like to get them into those zones as much as we can to have some visibility there, and then from time to time we'll have some extra enforcement in there. But yeah, I know I've heard that comment as well. It is there. Hey, please slow down because we might be in there. We might be hiding. We might have some unmarks out there that you don't see. There's that as well. But yeah, it's a double-edged sword there. We get that, but you know, I've only got so many deputies to be out there at one time too.
Thank you.
Sure.
Dale, I have some questions, maybe comments, and certainly, you know, I asked to have this topic brought up mostly because, you know, loss of life is very tragic, and it just seemed like we were having a lot of fatal accidents. Not your fault, not anybody's in this room, not their fault, but a fatality is very tragic for the families. So I got to thinking, you know, what is the action plan? You know, how long does it take to do an investigation? How soon can we react and make changes? And you've answered some of those questions, but I heard you say the investigation is still going on, and you said that for several of these things here. If I thought that we added a person to the crash investigation team and that would reduce the amount of time for us to make a reaction, that's what I wanna do. That's kind of why I brought it up. And the only thing I would say is, I mean, I live in Ashopen, O&P was always a terrible thing. We didn't have rumble strips in there, and I know why the rumble strips weren't there, because some of the neighbors didn't want them. After the last fatal there, you know, they were cut in. And I would also say that, and I don't remember you saying, you know, CW and 67, there was a fatal there here, not too long ago in Ashopen.
That's not our jurisdiction.
That's not yours.
CW and 67 is in Waukesha County. It curves about half by Hidden Meadows. It curves.
Oh, excuse me, MM, I'm sorry, MM.
Yep, I said that one.
60, okay.
Yep, I said that one.
But, you know, as a town, there was a lot of concern because people know these people, and it is tragic. You know, we got together as a town board, we have our own highway committee, we responded, and they said, you know, best thing to do maybe is put some rumble strips in. That was the conclusion of our little group. You know, we contacted the county and we paid to have them put in right away. I guess what I wanted today was to understand what's that action plan. You know, how soon, if the number one cause is failure to stop, what are the solutions? Not just in Dutch County, but statewide. There must be. I mean, I go out and I travel a lot. You know, there's flashing lights, there's stop signs on both sides, high visibility reflectors on them. You know, if that's what it takes to try to stop these things from happening, then those are the recommendations I would like to see come forward.
Sure.
And if it means we add staff to this crash investigation team, or whatever, then likewise, you know, those are the initiatives that I would like to see come forward.
So the 67 and double M was the one that I talked, we communicated with Chairman Meyer down in Ashland, and so we get those rumble strips, and that was the one I was talking about there. The length and time for these investigations really isn't the crash investigation team. It certainly isn't the medical examiner. It is the amount of time it takes to get back toxicology results. And a lot of these are pending because of toxicology results. We really can't talk about those. And we have an idea, we know what happened, but we need to get that full picture before we can make a full analysis. And the toxicology results at the state typically are at a very minimum 6 to 9 months before we receive those back. And so as a result of that, we have to keep these investigations under investigation. And unfortunately, I can't even really share that with family members as far as what happened, because I certainly have to be cognizant of the fact that I am not skewing the investigation or skewing perception, so that if there is a criminal charge, the DA's office can put together a good investigation without skewing anything. So that's really the reason why we can't talk about these at this point, is because of the delay in getting those results back.
And I'm not here to talk about what happened necessarily, you know, or, you know, whether the guy was drunk or drugged or whatever. My concern is, you know, if we can put up lights or rumble strips or high visibility signs, whatever it takes, that we can avoid the next one.
Sure.
That's what I want to see happen.
And I can appreciate that. The reason I was saying that was you were asking about, do we need additional people on the crash team? I don't think we do.
Okay.
I think our crash team is fine. I don't think we necessarily need the resources. I need more people out on patrol, so that they can be out there on the front end of it. But the crash team, I don't think that's necessary. In fact, they've just done some things with their program that has reduced the amount of time it takes for them to do reconstruction of the scene overall, which is fantastic. I routinely have conversations with the highway commissioner when we have a serious issue. I called Mr. Milky following the one that involved the fatality last year, involved their squad car out of the A&W, and expressed my concern there that, you know, we've got crashes. Now it's one of our squads involved in a fatality. Thankfully, he wasn't a causation of it, but I was able to work with him and the highway commissioner. We were able to get some flashing red stop signs put out there, and I think that has greatly helped. In my opinion, I know there's cost to it, but in my opinion, some of these more serious intersections where people aren't stopping, where we see it repeatedly, those flashing with the LED lights that are on the outside have been helpful. S and G is a really good example of that. We don't see as many crashes over there. A and W, we've had a couple, but it has greatly reduced from what we've seen in the past. If I had to give you one thing that the county board could do, it's identify those and be supportive of putting those signs up at those locations. 67 and double M, I think, would be another great location because of, you know, we had this one this year. We've had with a couple semi-involved crashes there at that same location because of people blowing that stop sign. We've had alcohol involved at that intersection as well. So, but that might be another location where flashing stop signs might be helpful. But unfortunately, people are not stopping at these all over the county, and we can only do so much enforcement of it, and trying to get people to comply with stop signs is not easy. So I think that is my recommendation, would be taking a little look at some of these locations and those flashing stoplights or stop signs. Outside of that, I don't know, Scott, if you have anything additional at the county board, any thoughts that you might have, I think that would be the most impactful at this point. I don't know, you guys at all have anything additional? You're involved with those two.
I mean, I think I agree with everything you said. Didn't flash the stop signs up there. I think another thing is that good thing that, you know, these crashes, we have multiple crashes, or multiple fatality crashes. That's important to know. And that several of them that I've seen this year, people are not using their safety equipment, not wearing their seatbelts. Yeah.
other questions on it?
Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, Sheriff. The next meeting will be November 5th. It will probably be downstairs again, but check your emails when they come out.
Upstairs.
I'm sorry, upstairs. On the 3rd floor.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just for clarification, is it the intent of the committee to try and bring back the resolution that was referred back to the sheriff at the next meeting, or is it not time sensitive? And the reason I bring that up is because the way the calendar falls, that the November county board meeting is the 9th, and the agenda will be established on the 2nd. So the JPP committee, if there's any action items for JPP, the meeting on the 5th would be past the deadline for establishing the November 9th agenda. I just wanted to throw that out, just.
I'm not sure if this item is that urgent that
Just wanted to
it
clarify.
has to get on the November county board agenda. Sheriff?
So, the only thing that would potentially be issue is approving it, if we do get to that point where we have a final contract ready to go, for the other municipality to be able to plan, approval, that would be beneficial. Otherwise, the entire agreement would most likely have to be brought to the county board, so it's, I guess, I'm not sure we'll get anything done by then, anyway, but, just so there's an awareness that if we do, because we are working on multiples right now, that we would need to get some kind of approval there before we could actually enter into it. We might be able to, that December might work out, I'm just saying, just so you're aware.
If that, and that's fine, if we have to do some individual ones, that the resolution has to go to the board, so be it, because I'd rather get the delegated authority done right the first time and not have to worry about it in the future.
Would the committee be opposed if we do have some timeline issues there that we see about having a special meeting to move something forward? Any issue with that?
That would be fine for me.
Right.
Right. Looks good with that, thank you. Again, next meeting will be November 5th, upstairs, not downstairs. And thank you for the visitors today and the comments. I really enjoyed constructive, positive, respectful input to help make better decisions. Do I have a motion to adjourn? There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.